Hey guys, Stealthy here. Today we're doing a bit of an after action report. This is a battle that was sent in by Etes. He's teamed with Kieta. I'm assuming that happened on TeamSpeak. Fighting against Wolfstrage and Rickest Rick. The map, Plungent Valley, 2v2, 1 hour time limit, total destruction. So there's no points limit there. That means that this is, unless you run into the time, just a battle to the death. Whoever can get to the other side first wins. Now, I know that Atas is using an Eastern mechanized deck. Kieta is unknown, but I'm thinking it's a USSR general deck based on the units that he's deploying. Now, I'm assuming that they were communicating on TeamSpeak because I'm not seeing any communication markers going up telling them which positions they're going to take. Even if you are on TeamSpeak, putting up markers like these are definitely going to help. Because it just makes it insightful to see, okay, my unit's going here, your unit's going there. Who's taking Bravo? Because your idea of taking Bravo might be, I'm gonna put infantry in buildings here. Their idea of taking Bravo might be, I need units there, I want ATGMs here, Recon there. Try to capture that building and put some reconnaissance there. So make sure you put attack, defense, tactical or text markers down at these various locations to make it a lot more insightful for the other player. Anyway, Etta is going right, Kieta is going left. Kieta is using a large amount of transports, as you can see. BMD2s, we have the Vidra 2. Oh, sorry, that's Etes, my bad. Hang on. Okay, this makes it a little bit more confusing, because I thought, hey, the Vidra is not a USSR unit. Ataz and Kieta, apparently, are going together to Foxtrot. Or they're going to split up down the middle. There we go. There's the attack markers from Ataz and Kieta. So they're going to take Bravo together. This is getting a little bit more muddled in this sense. If you don't really know who's taking what building, and they seem to have it sort of figured out, but it also makes the shared responsibility in the sense that nobody knows where they're going to be attacking or who's bringing what. I would prefer that somebody take this area, somebody take, and the same person take this area, or you take Foxtrot and Bravo, and you try to emphasize a push on Alpha, so that one player is playing more defensively, the other one's playing more offensively, and that way the offensive player has more points and more units available for the offense. Otherwise, you risk running into two weak pushes that are both going to fail, and you lose a lot of units. And considering that every lost unit in a game mode like this is going to cost you points, that could be a problem. Now, in case you're wondering, yes, I have it on neutral intentionally to show you exactly how blue is going to counter all of these different pushes. Now, talking about unit composition here on the right, we have some, let's see, yeah, see, this is what I'm concerned with. Of these units, we have ATGMs, we have AA, some infantry, as well as, of course, the BMP-2C with their, well, their decent concourse. They're not fantastic missiles, but they can serve as some deterrent. I'm seeing one recon unit. Try to have more recon in here to make sure what exactly you're going to come up against, because in an area like this, one recon is not quite going to cut it. I prefer to have a recon maybe on this side, another one there, and another one over there, so that I have excellent vision around these areas. On the left, we have Kieta's units pushing up. BTR 70s, of course, wheeled vehicles, these are going to be arriving first. We have BTR 80As, BTR 70s again, and then the rest of his push follows. This is a problem. The Strela, being a tracked vehicle, has now has been outrun by the wheeled vehicles. As such, you have a group here of 8 very thinly skinned transports who are definitely getting detected by the Cobra at this point, but the Cobra can fire at them. They do have some rocket pods, which against transports can definitely keep you at bay, while your AA is not yet in range, so that makes these transports particularly vulnerable. Also, we have seen one of the artillery batteries firing already. I think it was... was that the Mar? Maybe it was an airstrike here. This airstrike was put in place to at least neutralize any quick rushes to these buildings. So that's exactly what they're blocking off, but he's still coming. And that's when we run into trouble, because the BTR-70s are not very heavily armed. BTR-80As have autocannons, but they're not going to be doing too well against VAP 2013s. The VAP 2013s, again, not particularly heavily armored, but their autocannons can definitely chew through the BTR-70s when the BTR-70s don't stand a chance. In this situation, if you know that you're going up against the French, you can always expect units like these, fast autocannon transports. In that situation, the BTR-70 might not be your best choice. Now, he offloads his infantry quickly. You could say this is the right call and exactly the wrong call at the same time. Because right now, what you have here is a beautiful potential for an airstrike. If you have somebody who's going to attack with a bomber, this would be the ideal time to do it. Because you lose all your transports and your infantry, and you have your BMD-2s catching up. But that just means that you have 2 squads of 20 infantry per side, or per unit. And the worst is yet to come. Because while he is rushing in, without recon, mind you, so he doesn't even know that these tanks are here, or his recon already died, but I think he didn't even have any. While these guys are getting killed off quite quickly, the worst is yet to come. The Mar-240, the Israeli napalm thrower. Now this side has been taken up by Wolfstrache, who actually is not just using the French, is he? I think he's using a general NATO deck. I'm seeing rapiers, M1A1s, short arrows, the Mar. Yeah, he's using a general NATO deck. Okay, in that case, you don't know what transport you're going to be facing. It could be anything. So just ignore that last bit. But wait for the Mar-240. The Mar-240 at this point is aiming slightly off of position over here, as he's engaging the last surviving Modestroki from another transport. Unfortunately for Ikeda, this thing has more salvos. He just fired off 16 out of his 36 armament. The infantry that has survived so far is rushing into position. The Chasseurs over here are working over the T-80A. T-80A is a good tank, just not this close to enemy infantry. Try and keep these things at bay. Keep them back here or there, to make sure that they can still fire at enemy units, but are not too vulnerable. And here comes the next salvo from the Mar-240. And as you can see, the infantry does not stand a chance here. Worse, the infantry is about to die thanks to the napalm. He has no further infantry that can take up position here. There's no AA from Kiev, so any airstrike is going to go through. And there are no reinforcements coming in. So he just lost all of his forces here. That must have been quite frustrating. So why'd that happen? A, lack of recon. B, rushing in with mobile or wheeled vehicles first, with a lack of AA. And as such, that Recon Helo was able to spot you. Then the Mar-240 was able to strike you. And the Abrams, as well as other fire supporters over here, were able to easily pick off the transports. As an alternative, I would recommend that you either go full mechanized or full motorized in your initial push. Like the video that I put up earlier about the French. I knew that the initial fighting force, so that was the VAP 2013s with the Crotal, all of those were able to quickly push in. They were all going to arrive at the same time. Meaning I had Recon, I had Infantry, I had AA, everything together. I knew that some of my heavier fire support was going to come in later. Right now you had a split push, which means that the initial push was already getting wiped out, while the second push, or the second force, so the mechanized units that were lagging slightly behind, were not quite able to keep pushing in, and as they arrived, the first wave was wiped out. Let's see how Etaz is doing on the right flank. He has taken up buildings over here, or is about to. The Motorschützen are trying to get into a position. Motorschützen in a building like this are not particularly valuable. Buildings like these can work with light infantry, so that's the infantry that has a medium anti-GM range. units such as Rangers or any variables of those from the other nations can definitely work. Because Rangers can keep enemy infantry at bay and deal with enemy transports, as well as spot enemy targets that might be popping up here. So I know I'm called them Rangers, but you know, any, let's say, shock-trained troops here. Now he has managed to capture some of these buildings, but only just. Concourse versus Chasseur is not going to go particularly well for the Concourse. They're fighting off with a VZ58 versus the MAT as well as the NF1. I wonder if the Conqueror is going to make even one. Yeah, there we go. There's one kill on the Chasseur. That's really not going to be enough. Not by a long shot. And that's Atez's group wiped out on the right flank. If Blue had helicopters, this one would have been over particularly quickly. As they could just fly into Charlie, take out the command vehicle, and be done. Now, I didn't quite cover Atez's offensive, but I think he was a bit too aggressive in taking these buildings. Also, considering that he was using an Eastern mechanized, you know that you're always going to arrive slightly later than Blue 4. Because this distance, I believe, is faster for Blue 4. Mechanized units have to go all the way over this road and then traverse sideways. And they're only moving at 110 kph, as opposed to 150 for wheeled vehicles. Now, here he comes in with a bomber, an Su-7BM. I wonder why. I understand that you might want to take out some targets here, but right now the Chasseur are really not worth it. Chasseur are worth 10 points each. So even if he kills these, it's going to be 20 points, and he might get a Rema or two. The Su-7BM is worth 70 points. If this thing gets shot down, and considering that there is a Crotal over there, that is definitely a possibility. You just threw out 50 points, or actually you threw out 70 points in order to make 20, if you kill them. And that is debatable. Now, he didn't kill any, but he lost his jet. So that's 70 points down the drain without making any sort of profit from it. And there's no follow-up. So even if you weaken the enemy infantry, even if you panic or shock them, there's no follow-up from other units. So make sure that if you have lost all of your units here, just call off the bombers and consolidate positions further down in Alpha. Now down the middle, we have Concourse, we have Modestrelki, we have some transports to at least help them out slightly. There's further HGMs. What I'm missing is spotters. We have a perfect line of HGMs, but nobody who's going to provide these HGMs any information of where the target is. So what we need is spotters, and preferably lots of them. I would want to have Recon team over there, preferably one with exceptional stealth value, so a sniper team comes to mind. You could have a Recon unit or a Recon vehicle even over there, infantry here, and try to start moving your Recon units over there. Because Blue does have Commandos Para. It does not quite yet have any Recon on this side, so the only possibility that they have to spot your units, your Recon units that is, as they're moving to a position, would be the Commandos. And if you keep these bushes between you and them, there's definitely a possibility that you can get in safe. I'm going to slightly speed this up, otherwise it's going to turn into a very long video. Kieta is gearing up for another assault. Modestrelki, the BTR 70s, there's another couple BTR 70s and we have more coming in. HGMs, T62 MVs, fortunately they're not being spotted, but you cannot quite know that yet. You don't know what they have, and Blue 4 could have been pushing out with Recon units. Now, keep an eye on the minimap at large here. We have blue dots all over the place. They have a flanking gazelle to make sure that there is no enemy units that are either sneaking in or flying in through this area. The same goes here. They have a 163, they have a gazelle, and that should cover off these lines. They're also parking an empty Dornier 205, empty in the sense that A, it has no infantry inside, and B, it's almost expended its fuel, just as a picket line. And they're still reinforcing that picket line with further transport helos, so the UH-1. Other than that, these things don't really have a purpose anymore. Red, so Kieta and Etas do not have any of these defensive units. As such, if blue really wanted to, they could fly around. Kieta and Etas wouldn't even know it until, let's say, the infantry came at them and killed off their CV. That has happened to me more times than I care to admit. So try and put some defensive units around to make sure that you know exactly either over here with defensive units that something might be coming in, or B, put some defensive units around Charlie. They have some defensive units around Charlie on the right flank, but what they missed is this Black Hawk. Now, not surprising because it is so far off to the side, but this Black Hawk is carrying Rangers, which we're going to be seeing a little bit more of later on. Now, as you can see, Kieta is trying to do a flanking with a couple of MI8s. These guys are definitely going to be dropping off Recon infantry. The Gazelle has spotted it. I'm not exactly sure what the Phantom was trying to do here. Maybe some splash damage or something. The Helos are trying to drop off their infantry ASAP. Blue immediately knows about it, and as they're getting dropped off, they are already getting shot at by the Gazelle. This is not something that Tenderezvedka are going to be doing quite a lot against. And at that, you don't need Tenderezvedka, or Tenderezvedki, I suppose. One group of 5 Razvedka would definitely be enough. That's all you need. And then, if you're trying to flee, try not to fly directly over the enemy lines, but then, if you have a helo that you are pretty sure is going to be dying anyway, send it over Delta. You might find something that you like. Now, Kieta is gearing up for another attack over here. We have, again, quite a lot of infantry which is ready to go. There is just one thing that he may have overlooked. And that's the fact that that weapon, whichever it is, we know it's the Mar 240, but he probably didn't at this stage. That weapon has not been taken out. As such, it is still going to be a threat. And all that blue needs to do, once they see that you're attacking on this end, is just click the Mar 240, point it in the general direction of REDFOR infantry, and see them all getting wiped out. That's all that they had to do over here. Next, he's putting up a smoke screen. That's good work, but it's in the wrong location. Also, it's a bit of a indicator of here I am, and I'm coming for you. Not so much here are the mortars. That's more of a side benefit for blue. If you want to make use of these smoke screens, and considering the large amount of ammo supply on the Plotnos, you could just keep putting up smoke screens. Just to keep the enemy guessing. It's basically the old Boy Cried Wolf system, or story. If you keep putting up smoke, blue's going to keep crying wolf. They're going to eventually ignore the smoke screen, and that's when you attack. Of course, when you're in the heat of battle, this is a far easier said than done. And so far, Spetsnaz seem to be doing quite well. They are definitely reaching the buildings that they want to get to. The Mark 240 so far hasn't done anything, but here's the problem. A Phantom. Now, Kieta doesn't have a lot of AA, especially not anything that can deal with enemy airplanes. The Strela over here is too short range to do anything useful at 2100 meters. So if you're trying to attack, and you want to make sure that no enemy airstrikes come in, just put a friendly ASF circling over here. Doesn't even have to be yours, it's just a deterrent, to make sure that something like this doesn't happen. Of course, some people can see the fighter and go, well, I'll risk it, because as long as the enemy infantry is not getting in here, I'm keeping hold of this structure. And even then, you could argue that flying in a Phantom and wiping out all the infantry is still going to be more profitable than losing the Phantom to the enemy fighter. So once again, he's engulfed in flames, and to make it worse, there's a second one. So the whole area that he was hoping to go through is now alight, and these units really cannot do a lot. He's pushing Conkers forward. He's hoping to engage the Abrams, I think. Yeah, he's engaging the Abrams. The Abrams has seen that, is retreating, and the missile decides not to get the target. In the meanwhile, in the middle, their forces have been wiped out, and we just have a bunch of chasseurs which are probing forward. As you can see, they're also operating under smokescreen cover, and with that they can quickly jump building to building And if they keep pushing along enough, they might even find the command infantry over here. Now remember that ranger group that I mentioned earlier from the Black Hawk? Black Hawk's over here. Keep note that it's landed. You might argue, well, why the hell would you want to land it? Well, an airborne helicopter is going to get picked up on radar from airplanes. So let's say that Red happened to be doing an airstrike and coming in from over here. They could go, well, my target's over there, but I'm seeing a blue blip over here. Let's see what that is. Then they see the Black Hawk. When it's landed, it's not going to get picked up on radar, and as such, the Ranger incursion over here is far safer. Now, chasseurs have at this point reached all the HGMs. We're seeing some quick commandos being deployed with the support from their Mi-24Ds. The commandosi, in a situation like this, are fast response units. They're also quite expensive at that. I understand why you want to deploy them, but there are cheaper alternatives to just wiping out a couple of chasseurs. Now over here we have some vision probably from the Svetava over here, which is providing line of sight for the Concourse. Concourse tried to fire off a missile. I'm not sure exactly how many they hit, because they already fired 7. Unfortunately, they were not able to detect the, I think it was the Roland or the transport long enough for the missile to hit. While the Commandosi are still trying to get some of that lost terrain back, Rickest is already reinforcing this position with further legionnaires. Now, interestingly, we still have the Razvedka over here from Kieta. They have not been chased down by the Gazelle. I'm not exactly sure why that didn't happen. The Gazelle, of course, you could argue was out of ammo, so it would not have been likely for this thing to win a fight. But it didn't really need to win the fight, you just needed to tell, for example, the Phantoms where the infantry group was heading to. Of course, you can bet where the infantry group is heading to. And blue, as opposed to red, does have a whole defensive line. We have a command unit with their helicopter next door. Not that the helicopter is going to do much, but if the helicopter gets killed off, then there's a fairly good chance that they also know where your infantry is. They have Chasseur, VEP 2013s, even a Flak Panzer M42. Now these things are terrible at maneuvering. Autonomy is only 250, but for a defensive position like this, they can work. AMX 10Ps with infantry inside even. So they just have a whole bunch of defensive units parked around. Even one in the back, the 163 there. Now let's see what's going on with Kieda, because he just got his ass handed to him again over on this left area, thanks to those napalm bombers. The situation that was hard to be prevented. You could argue that the smoke screens could have worked, maybe. So what I mentioned earlier was just keep putting up smoke screens and just make sure that Blue 4 eventually goes, well, there's another smoke screen, I'm going to ignore that. And make sure you have a fighter, because with a fighter these two Phantoms would at least be reduced to one Phantom and maybe would not even be sent out at all. And Phantoms are pretty decent jets, 30% ECM, so they have a fairly good chance of making it out alive. But still, they're not invulnerable, and they can easily get wiped out. And once again, this is I think the third time that these Phantoms are causing issues. First in blocking off this line, second dropping off the napalm here during that attack, and now again in burning out any infantry that was left over here. So all that Blue has to do now, if they want to, and that's the main question here, do they want to? If they want to, they can just put out the Spetsnaz GRU, send some infantry in, and recapture the buildings, because there's nothing which is withholding them from that area any further. Razvedka from Kiev are still pushing up. They are not going to get anywhere because they're going to immediately run into the AMXs. The Rangers, on the other hand, are getting quite far. They have made it almost to within Cheriton, and while they are potentially going to be running into the Vidras, they are going to be spotting the Vidras before the Vidras spot them. That is definitely an advantage for the Rangers. They can operate quite stealthily, you can see what the potential threat is, and once you know that, you can try to avoid it. And there is another angle of approach open to them. They can go back through these woods, cross the road, and come in through here. This is just enough tree cover, especially this narrow gap here, just enough tree cover to make it almost to next to the fob. Now the units that we have over here, quite a few Commandosi from the surviving, push back, I suppose you could call it. We have VDV, Mostrelki. I'm not seeing HEGMs at this point, and this is what I was worried about. Once again, we have a reconnaissance group inside Blue 4 territory, so not just the Rangers back there, but also the commandos at this point. And once again, Blue 4 is just casually striking out positions in Red 4 territory. As you can see, these bombs are going to be dropped right on top of the VDV. There is one Strela 10M that tried to do anything against it. They did get the kill in tandem with the other Flacom. I think that might have been the Seed aircraft, as I think that the bomber survived. Look at this Rafale. Completely undaunted, flying right over the enemy lines. He's going to regret that, as he's getting quite a few missiles fired at him. And Red 4 still does not have any longer range anti-air. That's going to be a problem, because without long range AA, these planes are going to continue operating uncontested. And as such, Blue can strike pretty much when and where they want to, because they know right now that there is no radar AA, or it's not turned on, it's not activated, because the Seed flew over and didn't hit anything. And two, we know that if there is only short range AA, it's pretty easy to just try and avoid it with your planes. Again, what I'm not seeing down the middle is reconnaissance. What I am seeing here is a couple of VDV with BMD-2s. This is in itself not a terrible position for the BMD-2, because it can provide autocannon fire and some HGM fire if it gets a spotter. Once again, it doesn't have a spotter. Always keep your eyes on whatever you can see. Make sure you have enough recon units. Right now on the right flank we have these Fatava and the Special Aufklärer, and that's it. That's enough on that side. At least we have some optics there. Left side we have nothing. We have one BTR-80 coming in with recon. I'm not sure if this is going to be used in the active recon role or just in an aggressive role. That remains to be seen. And down the middle, we don't really need recon at this point just yet, although recon in a position like this could have helped to spot the commandos as they were moving to a position where they are now. So try and get more reconnaissance as a whole. It's really going to help you out. Alright, I'm going to speed it up again a little bit. The Legionnaires and the Commandosi are fighting a desperate fight against... the Commandosi and the Mostrelki are fighting a pretty desperate fight against the French here, which are taking some damage, but Red at this point just barely has enough units to keep pushing. There's an artillery strike, looks like Amlares. Once again, 2 tornadoes fly over. This time around they didn't even get shot at all. So this time they were just flying over, doing another bombing run. And just as as the FJB were trying to make a push with a full squad, they suddenly get kicked back to 2 guys, and the Legionnaires are once again safe. Now the Rangers have been able to spot the Vidras. They're moving off to the side and seeing where they can do an incursion. And this is going to get particularly painful. Just watch this. Here come the Rangers. Let's see what they can see. At this point they probably know where the fob is. By the way, let's for a moment quickly look at Recon for Blue. Recon, Recon, Recon here. They don't have anything there yet. Chasseurs on this side are acting as a picket line, not actual Recon. 1 commando para over there. And of course all these defensive helicopters and side units. So the flanks are completely secure. Anyway, back to these Rangers. Actually, let's see what they can see. Right now they're still trying to spot anything that happens in this zone. They're taking quite a risk getting this close, but as you can see they have their weapons turned off so they don't accidentally give their positions away. Let's see, are we going to be seeing more action from these Rangers now, or are they still going to take some time? Oh, you have to be kidding me. Yep, that was potentially another airstrike by Blue 4. By the looks of it, could have been 2 Phantoms coming in from this end, putting in a large corridor of napalm. Iglas, while they are pretty good AA units, I mean, they're not great, but they get the job done occasionally against helicopters, are not good against planes until the plane is already bombing you, because that's when it's going to be into range. Other situations, it's not going to do that much. So the FLACOM over here are not the right AA unit. You want to have radar AA to make sure you can keep units at bay from far, far away, and not just when they're flying overhead. Now, it looks like Kieta has his Spetsnaz VMAF over here, so we do have a recon team. But keep in mind that this terrain slopes down a little bit. Oh, look. Further tornadoes. This terrain slopes down a little bit. That means that the Rangers, the VMF, can see right up to here. Anything that happens below that, they cannot see it, thanks to the slope of the terrain. It's like the curvature of the Earth. They cannot see beyond it. Anyway, we have further tornadoes coming in. I still have not seen a single REDFOR aircraft, at least not in a fighter role. So let's see what these tornadoes are going to be striking. Here comes the IDS. What are you going to hit? Looks like they're going for the resupply. Yep, and the command infantry at that. At this point, quite a few missiles managed to get near or hit the tornado, but the tornado still survived. And without this zone, they're missing quite a bit of income. And you could argue they probably still have enough, but Bravo is definitely important, as Blue now has a +7, let's say a +10, divided between the two of them. Red only has a +6 divided between the two of them, and in the short run this is not going to be too much of a problem. In the long run it will be. Now the Rangers are making their move. They've captured 2 Colosses. It looks like they're trying to drag them into the woods over here. That's when immediately we're going to see quite a few units get spawned in from Kieta and Ataz as a response to this. Hoping to at least get these Rangers detected. I would start moving around with the Vidras as well. Or at least try and split them off. Keep one Vidra over here, maybe another one there, and send the other 2 hunting. At short range though, the Rangers will kill them off. So the first thing I would want to send in is a reconnaissance helicopter. And that's not something I'm seeing just yet. Now the Rangers have been giving their position away by firing off a Carl Gustav. They were able to take out both of the Vidras over here, while only taking a single loss, or 2 depending on how you want to look at that unit. And that's really the only thing that the Rangers were frightened of at this point. We have some more units coming in. And they also seem to be doing a bit of a vengeance push over here. 2 Mi-24Vs, a Ka-52 and a Ka-50 Akula. All hell-bent on trying to get to this zone. In a situation like this, that makes sense. You can try to fly around and kill off the units here, the command unit preferably. Keep in mind though, that you know that your Razvedka at some point got killed off. That means that there is a fair chance that this is not the only defensive unit that the Razvedka ran into. And that BLUFOR might very well have defenses. Not just that, but there is of course the Gazelle. Now I wonder if Blue already knows they're coming. Apparently the Dornier didn't spot them. Unsurprising really, because they have poor optics. They should be getting into range of the Gazelle right about now. Here we are. The 50 and these 24Vs are engaging the Recon. There we go, they just lost vision again. But now they know exactly what's going on. They're putting up an attack marker, they're putting up another Gazelle. Just see how quickly... There we go, my helo died. He's even pointing it out. We have units coming in here. Both of BLUFOR's team members are very much aware of the threat. They know that something attacked them. They don't quite know what it is. I'm not sure if they were able to click over to that side of the map in time to see what happened there. But at least they're getting quite worried. And they are right on point that there is something going on here. And that's when the helos just spawn, or at least come out from the side of the hill here. Firing HEGMs left and right, mostly attacking the AMX 10Ps. Not very high value targets, but then again, they do have autocannons. That's when the flank panzer lights up. The Akula takes a lot of damage. It's not even the most important helicopter at this point, that's the Ka-50. This is the one that you want to keep alive, because without this one, the Mi-24Vs won't have a target. So they keep flying in, and this is when Blue Force additional defensive units arrive. Just a couple of Vulcans, very cheap as response force, making sure that Blue doesn't have to dedicate too many units to them. The Mi-24Vs take a lot of fire, the 52 dies. The Mi-24Vs, or at least any of these, were able to, I think, kill off one of the command vehicles that was over here. The other command unit, that's the command infantry, has survived, and all that they have managed to achieve over here is get some AMX-10P killed. I think just one. The other survived. Maybe they were able to take out another unit and a command unit. So let's say that's 115 points, maybe 130 if you're generous. That's all. They invested a lot more into that than they got out of it. And in destruction, you're always trying to get a positive exchange rate. I send you a 60-point tank, and with that 60-point tank, I want to kill, let's say, 5 transports worth 20 points each. That's a positive trade. We're not seeing that here. Now, once again, let's check Recon. We have the special over there, the Svetava special over here. One VMF, who has been taking quite a bit of fire by the looks of it. Not even sure if it was actually aimed at him. Another VMF there. The T-80 is getting spotted, by the way. I think that might be due to the Rangers. Would they be able to spot that? Yeah, I think that's the Rangers. And look at that, they even know where the VMF are. These guys are just getting spotted. Always try to keep these guys safe, because VMF teams are very, very valuable, and you don't get a lot of them. Alright, air patrols. There's the Black Hawk. I think that was the Black Hawk that they parked back here. It's now trying to make a solo push. But at this point, Red really doesn't have that much left. Blue already has 3,770 points versus the just 1,350 from Red. That's all. So Blue can just comfortably sit back. Either wait for the timer to tick out or just respond to REDFOR's aggression. Because an attacking party, more often than not, will take more losses than a defensive party. And that's exactly what they seem to be employing. Now let's have a quick look at Blue Force lines. Blue has Rangers, they have Chumats, they have a defensive line set up here, making sure that REDFOR cannot go around, but they have to go through here. We have AA, HGMs are being dropped off. We have a Recon Tiger over here that's engaging some of the units back on this end, where there's no AA. So Kieta's units are just getting butchered by the Tiger. We have Rangers over here, AA, Chasseur in case they decide to push in, ATGM if they want to push in with support vehicles, further AA. You could argue that this would be a beautiful position for Recon for Blue. Over here, I would be expecting another Recon unit, but they just have quite a few Chasseurs stacked up, and one Commandos Para, and they're now pushing on the right, with Legionnaires, Rima, a Kyler, and further Chasseur. And instead of going head-on, where Attis' defensive line is strongest, they're trying to find a weakness into it. And that's exactly what they're getting. They're pushing in from the side, and that's where he does not have a lot of units. Artie is trying to at least fire, well, at least trying to hit something in these woods. Didn't quite get it. Reamers are pushing forward, Legionnaires are pushing forward. And that is not the only attack that we have happening, because once again the tornadoes fly in. There is some attack or some counter over here, some Stralis, but they're out of range. Again, that's the problem with longer or shorter infrared AA. They simply don't have the line of sight or the range to deal with long range planes. Such as the IDS, which drop their bombs at a decent distance. Now T-72 M1M versus a Leopard 2A5 is not going to go very well for the T-72, so it's trying to reverse. It did try to get a shot, and at this range you could argue that it would even stand a chance against the Leopard. The BMP-2Cs are trying to do something against the Leopard, hitting actually one missile and then getting wiped out. I was actually a bit surprised. I thought that the Leopard would have enough firepower to deal with both of those transports before they got that second missile off. Legionnaires pushing forward, Rima, Kyler. Kyler's a great unit for a situation like this. If you're dealing with infantry and potentially transports. Has that main gun and the autocannon, which you can fire at the same time. The Conquerors are alive, but out of ammo that they can use against the Leopard, and even if they would use it, the Leopard fires so quickly that the Conquerors would die off very, very soon. Now, Kate is putting up a smoke screen over here. I'm not exactly sure why, though. Because this is not a particularly valuable area. This is not really something that you need to put a lot of smoke on. You can just keep your units moving through these buildings. And Kate is probably going to watch this video. If you do, make sure you leave a comment about why you have this smoke screen here. Again here, the smoke screen is later than your units are pushing up. What is the point of the smoke screen? Try to coordinate that a little better. Smoke first, movement second. If you do it the other way around, you're just going to give your units potentially a detriment in their line of sight. They just cannot see everything. So this smoke, I don't know, it might have been confusing the blue for as well. Anyway, the right flank has fallen. Command unit there has died. We have an MI-24D who's trying to do something against the blue 4 units. And that seems for now to be the only unit that blue 4 either decided not to bring or forgot to bring. AA. So they're pulling back their Leopard a little bit. It has taken quite a beating and it might need a bit of a top up soon. Its fuel is getting to, well, 370, 360. Leopard 2A5s can go quite a long way, but even they tend to run out of fuel. And we already have a Mankali coming in for that. Now, at this point the Crotal rushes forward trying to deal with the MI-24D. This one again does not really have enough line of sight. If you notice that your attack helicopter is not quite getting shot at, you can always try to bring a Recon helo, and not the KA-52, just your standard MI1, MI4 I think, MI8, depending on what you have in your deck. Bring a Recon helo. Try to have a spotter for your attack helicopter, or attack helicopters potentially. FJB pushing forward. Keep in mind that an FJB only has a 17 AP value, and as such does not do very much against heavier tanks. The Kyler has 12 frontal armor. That means that it's going to be using both the main gun and the autocannon for quite a while before it dies. And every time it fires, you lose more and more FJBs. So these FJBs just do not stand a chance against the Kyler. That's exactly what you're seeing over here. To make matters worse, the Kyler has a very good rate of fire on that main gun. 10 rounds a minute, which means that they're going to fire every 6 seconds. And as such, your FJB simply doesn't have the rate of fire to kill them off. Further airstrike, this time escorted with a seaplane. And once again, REDFOR's infantry is on fire and does not get any sort of AA backup. Either from planes, from longer range radar AA, stuff like that, they just don't have it. And that is going to be a problem. Special Aufklärer have now been detected. Kyler still engaging. The Kyler is just pushing through and basically dealing with whatever it can at this point. It has already massively gotten a return on investment, so it's killed off so many units that it's definitely earned its keep. Unfortunately, it runs out of fuel right in the middle of the crossroads here. Not really going to be that much of a problem, as blue doesn't have any, as red doesn't have anything can deal with it. Still, even if they lose it right now, it's already made far more than they invested in it. And that's pretty much how the game ends. There's really not that much that happens in these last 2 minutes. Of course, a few more artillery bombardments, just hoping to kill stuff, or at least keep it contained. Further airstrikes, and that's when Kieta surrenders and Atas quickly after. Total victory for blue. Few things. Make sure you have longer range AA. Make sure you have, if you don't have long range AA, at least a fighter up most of the time. If you are dealing with an artillery platform such as the MAR 240 or any other napalm unit, see if you can fire at it as quickly as it fires. Or just try to keep them guessing by putting up constant smoke screens. Next, make sure you have enough recon, because there was simply not enough vision on the enemy team, and some of the recon that we saw was either misplaced, thanks to terrain cover, or due to areas where you just didn't really have the best concealment or the best position for them. Alright, let's quickly go over to the deck section and find Atta's deck. See if that thing needs work. Let's see here. It's a Eastern Bloc motorized. That is something that I personally wouldn't go with too soon, because I prefer the motorized far more than the mechanized. Motorized has some of the better units, at least the better infantry units. Let's see, logistics. Yeah, this is okay. Infantry, we have the Igla 1. Igla 1s are pretty terrible at AA. If you're looking at the options that you have, I would try to go for the Grom. Comparing the Grom to the Strela, or sorry, to the Igla that he has, you can see that the Grom has far better stats. Better range against planes, helicopters, and far better accuracy. They're slightly more expensive, but I'll take that. Concourse. He has quite a few Concourse, both Concourse M and Standard Concourse. Pretty good units, but it means you're fighting a defensive war. In this situation, that could work. Granatomet, AGS 17, pretty good. I would consider going with Veteran first and then seeing if you run out. If you don't run out, you can always switch them back. Or if you don't run out, you can stick them at Veteran. If you do run out, you can always switch them back to Hardened. So in a situation like this, I would say get your Conquerors in a different vehicle, because I would prefer to keep the Vidras available for actual attacking units. These are, as far as I'm concerned, the second units that come in, only after you've secured a position. And the Vidras are by far the best attacking units that you have with an autocannon. So I'd say delete these, delete the Vidra, get these at 8, and then if you really want that many HGMs, that many Conquerors, get the standard Conquerors just in a cheap transport, maybe the OT-62A there, and see if that's enough. Alright, motor shoots a 90 with a BMP-2C. That's a nice transport. 2A42 is a good autocannon. Does quite well against enemy transports. Accuracy for an autocannon is pretty good at 25%. HGMs, well, it's alright. Doesn't do particularly well. Can serve as a bit of a deterrent, since the enemy might not know what they're being fired at with. FGB-40. Unfortunately, the only option that you have for these is the Mi-24D. That makes them quite mobile, exceptionally useful at flanking or keeping your own flank secure. I haven't seen them used in that role. I saw them used in an attacking role, which is not what they're best at. These guys are classed as commando squads, and with both an RPG and a Strela, they can deal with virtually anything if they're on the flanks. If they're on the front line, you would really want to have a machine gun in order to have them deal with enemy infantry better. Commandosi are far better suited for a frontline role, because they do come with the RPK, and unfortunately you can only bring them in the Mi-24D. So this is really the only option that you have. That's why I don't like them that much. And then the Granatomets and the Conquerors. Sports. Sopol, the Pram for mortar support, the Strela, and the Tunguska. In a situation like this, what we really were missing in this deck was the Cub. This could have solved a lot of your airplane concerns. So in a situation with a deck like this, I would say forget the Strela, because you have the Sopel, and the Sopel can do most of what the Strela can does and better. And get, well, 4, maybe 6 if you run out of a lot of these, and that should cover most of your AA needs. Alternative would be the Tor. It has less range against airplanes, it has far more missiles, it's also slightly more expensive, range against helicopters is better, accuracy slightly worse, and you need more shots to kill something, because this thing has an HE of 7 versus 9. The Cub is generally more micromanagement, because you need to resupply it. The Flakcom Tor is a very, very general multi-role platform. So actually in a situation like this, I'd say take 4 Flakcoms. Tanks. It's a mechanized deck, so you don't really get the best pick of the litter. I'd say make sure you have at least the Wilk. That's the heaviest tank you can field. 17 frontal armor, 20 punch on the gun, 55 accuracy. Right now, all of these tanks are really quite similar. If you compare the Wilk to the T-72 M1M, it's almost exactly the same tank. All you're getting for that 5 points extra is the sphere. And for that, and you sacrifice some side armor. That's really the most important stats covered. I'd say stick to the T-72 M1M. So keep that one. Delete the Wilk. Get the better Wilk, the 120 point. It's still not going to engage another super heavy one-on-one, but you at least get a little bit more punch out of it. Because this thing has 20 AP power versus the 15 or 16 that you're getting from the other tanks. Or 18, my bad. And then, why not get the standard T-72? If you are pushing with a lot of infantry, the standard T-72 can really help you out. It has 4 HE on the gun. It's quite cheap, 45 points only. And that's really all that it needs to do. Just survive a little, get some hits on enemy infantry, because each hit with 4 HE is going to wipe out, well, about half a squad. And they're quite numerous. So even if you lose some, you really don't mind. We just need to free up a slot or some activation points to get them. So we're going to have to look into that. Quite a few special Aufkläder as well as Stavas. The problem is you don't have a Recon Helo. So such as the Mi2 would have been very useful in that role where the Rangers came in and you just didn't have anything to spot them. I would say bring in your special Aufkläder in the SPW40. This gives you 2 Recon units for the price of 1. And then get either the Mi2RO or the Mi2. And the Mi2 here has slightly less improved optics. It has very good versus exceptional, but they're cheaper. And since they aren't actually a combat unit, but they can still spot for 40 points, this is what I would go with. Vehicles. These. Ideal units to defend your cap. They can deal with Rangers, they can deal with helicopters to some extent if you really need them to. Very cheap, and they just do that quite well. We did see some of these. I don't really think you need any of these. The ASU-85Ms are, well, they're not terrible units, but I think you can get a better pick. If we sacrifice this one, we free up 2 points, and for that we can get the T-72. Let's go with 12. Then you have the PRDM Concours M. You already have a lot of Concours in this deck. Do you really need more? If you don't, you could consider going with one less Concours card over here and getting one more infantry card so you can push further. Other unit is the Pram S. It's a multi-role unit, especially good at clearing out enemy infantry from afar, because this thing fires 5 HE projectiles and at a range of 2450. So this is a really nice range, because it's definitely outside of the range of most anti-tank weapons, barring HGMs, and it can still do some other fire support duties. But make sure you blend these in. Don't use them as single units. Blend them into a push. Helos, we have the S24, the Mi-24P for quick responses, and the URS. I wouldn't really use the URS. I never really saw the point of it, and I'm probably going to take quite a bit of flack from that in the comments, but I just don't quite like this Helo. So I would not bring it. Instead, you could go for the Mi-24 Whiskey or the Mi-35. These are pretty much the same Helo. The only difference that you see is the type of rocket pods that they're using. This is 80mm, which is 2 HE versus 57mm, but they carry more of them. They're also quite similar to this one. Do you really need that many Helos in a deck like this? I don't really think so. No. Let's just not spend those 2 points just yet. Then aircraft, what we have over here is a plane killer / ground supporter with the S-24Bs. The Su-7BM that we saw getting killed off quite early, cluster bomber, and a fighter. This would have been perfect to deal with those phantoms. Why did we not see it up there? That would have been very, very handy. This thing is more of a anti-infantry unit. This is more of a, well, tank killer if you want to be generous. But what I would really like to get is a dedicated anti-tank / multi-role unit that can deal with infantry, that can deal with tanks. I would not take this one, the SU-7. I would instead take the MiG-912A. This one has 12 HE and starts a fire because it's a napalm bomb. So it's first going to explode for 12 HE and then drop napalm. They are far more expensive than the other bombers that you have, but they can also double up as supporting fighters. They have 40% ECM, and as such they are quite survivable. And then we need a tank killer. The SU-25 cannot really be depended on to do that because its ECM is so low and it's very slow, meaning it's an easy target to intercept. So I wouldn't bring that one. You could go for the Series 30. This thing is used quite a lot. Accuracy is good, range is good, ECM is better. It's again quite slow. What else do we have for options? The 22. Yeah, this could work. The MiG-23BN. ECM slightly better, speed's better. Missile is a standoff or a semi-active. That means that it's not as good as the fire and forget. In case you don't know the difference, semi-active means that the plane needs to be able to see the target. Fire and forget means just fire it and fly the plane out. The plane doesn't need to be around when the missile needs to impact. So this one is a little bit more friendly in maintenance in that sense. And then you don't really need the MiG-23BN. I would go for an ECM aircraft or a seed aircraft. Situation like this, I would pick the Su-22 M4P. Reason, actually, let's pick the East German M4P because it has better range. Its ECM is slightly worse, but it can engage threats usually far beyond their range, with the exception of the Patriot. So take this one, take 2 of them, I'd say, and that way you have a little bit more of a diverse AA or plane section. Alright, then we have 2 additional points. Let's see, what can we spend it on? T-55s could come in handy for spotting. BRDM-2s are alright. Wouldn't really use them that much. Let's see, what else do we have? The Snezka. This is a nice unit. 12 points, or actually you get 12 of them for 30 points, my bad. You get good optics, medium size, and these guys can be very helpful if you're pushing with the rest of these transports. Because these transports generally are pretty blind. They all have poor optics. Some of the tanks have mediums, but just blend in a couple of these. They're quite cheap, 30 points, and if you just bring 8, you can see if you go through all of them. If not, then keep the 8. If you do, go back to 12. Alright, so that's the deck. You are probably going to be disagreeing, but this is what I would play with. And if you want to play with this deck, you can find it in the description down below. Hope you enjoyed the replay. Let me know what you think of the video so far. If you have any further suggestions for ATEZ or Kieto on how to do better, let me know in the comments down below. And I hope to see you soon for another video. Thank you for watching.